This is Austin Real Estate Investing.
Austin Real Estate Investing.
We'll be discussing real estate investing in Austin, Texas, and bringing you experts from all different sectors of the real estate game. Your host, Jordan Moorhead, is a real estate agent and investor in Austin and is here to help you get started or to build your portfolio and explore new strategies.
Hi, this is Jordan Moorhead, and this is the Austin Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today, we have another amazing guest for you, Jay Papasan. He is pretty much a person that does so many different things. So Jay is an executive at Keller Williams International. He is an author of many, many books, and he's also a real estate investor with his wife here in the Austin area. Hey, Jay, how's it going?
Going great. Happy Friday to you. No, who knows when they're listening to this, but hey, happy Friday, because that's when we're recording it.
Absolutely. No, I'm excited for the weekend here. I've got a good conference coming up here in town. But most importantly, before we get started here, Jay, I have a really important question for you. What's your favorite restaurant in Austin?
Oh, that's a good one. I did a podcast, like 50 episodes a long time ago, and I asked everybody what their favorite taco was in Austin. Like, you got to get your edge in there if you're a foodie. So the one that we save for special occasions is Olame. Good luck. You can Google it because it's a little tough to spell. It's the name of the chef's grandmother. And the chef is a guy named Michael Fotoge. He's, I think, a 3-time James Beard finalist, and he does Southern cuisine at like a Michelin 4-star, whatever it is, rating. Like, he's very exquisite chef. He's got another restaurant now called Mayday, which is a different kind of vibe. I've been there a few times, but Olame is like a special place to take special friends.
Okay. I think I've been there. I'll definitely have
special
to look
tip.
it up.
They're famous for their biscuits, which are not on the menu.
Oh, really?
And so when I first met him, we spent almost 30 minutes talking about biscuits, and he spent a whole summer playing around with different combinations of different fats and everything because he wanted to make the perfect biscuit. And I think they've come really close.
Do you know what makes their biscuits special?
No. I could guess like lard or something,
Probably
like usually
lard.
It's something that's really bad for you, like butter and lard and all that. But they started a chain during COVID called Little Ola's Biscuits because people just wanted the biscuits. And they serve them at the Pitch and Putt now and a couple of other places.
I will absolutely have to go back there if I've not been. I swear I've been, but I'm going to check it out again. And that prompts another question. What have you found is the best taco in Austin after your questions of all the tacos?
Oh, gosh. I've got a handful of favorites. The one we eat most often is my son's favorite, and it's nothing super special. It's just a great value. We go to Dan's Hamburgers on Saturday mornings. He did it this morning. He drove back from college. I heard him at 5:30. The fire alarm went off in his dorm at 3 a.m. He's like, well, I might as well drive home. And that's a great way to, even though it was early, it's a great way to wake up to have your son come back from college. And he's like, can I go to Dan's? And I was like, heck yeah. So Dan's, the thing that makes their tacos, you get a bacon, egg, cheese, and potato. And they don't just put potato lumps in there. They put hash browns in. And so it's tasty, but plain. If I was going to say you had 30 minutes before you had to go to the airport, you've never had an Austin taco, I'd probably take you to Veracruz All Natural and get their Migas taco, which is truly exceptional.
Yeah. That's an amazing taco. I've never had tacos from Dan's. I'm going to have to check that out. I mean, plenty of cheeseburgers from Dan's.
It's just close. I remember when we drove by it the first time, I looked through the windows and there were like post office workers, there were delivery drivers, there were 2 cops. And I was like, that's a huge endorsement for a diner. Like, you've got people that want value food and it's going to be consistent. And yeah, we support it. It's a local restaurant for us.
Yeah. Yeah, they've got there's one on South First, there's one on Airport, there's a couple around town.
Yeah, we do the one at Manchac and Ben White.
Okay, awesome.
Not that it makes a difference, I don't think.
Oh, they're all good. I've had burgers from a couple of them and I've enjoyed them all.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like the opposite end of the spectrum from Olame, right? But it's, got to have your comfort foods too.
absolutely. Love it. We ate a
What's
ton
your
of
favorite taco? Like while we're talking tacos.
favorite tacos. I think it's Las Trancas on Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
Would probably be my favorite.
Okay.
I love Tyson's too.
I don't know Tyson's.
Tyson's is up right off so right where Airport and 35 intersect, a little bit further up Airport. Tyson's is delicious. They're not traditional tacos whatsoever. Las Trancas would be more of the traditional, and Tyson's is kind of out there, but it's delicious.
All these investors are like, when are they going to talk about investing? And I'm going to say, you're building wealth so you can enjoy the good things in life. And in Austin, one of them is good food and good tacos. There we go. There's our connection.
Yeah. So I guess that's a best introduction we ever could have had. But Jay, could you briefly explain who you are and how you got involved with real estate investing?
Sure. I mean, who I am. Well, boy, that's the timeless question, right? I think of myself as a husband and father first, and then an author. Professionally is one of the things I love to do. Creative work. I love to explain complicated things, and books is the medium that I've spent the most time with and enjoy. So those would be like three ways to describe me. My job is I'm the VP of Strategic Content at KW. I've been here for almost 24 years. I've run probably 10 different departments, launched a bunch of them. When I started, I was like not employee 27 overall, but there were only 27 employees when I started. And there were 6,700 agents. And so it's a very different company. We've moved to 2 different office buildings since then. And now we've got, close to 200,000 in something like 52 countries. So it's been a journey, and I've got to be a part of that. What else do we do? Wendy and I have ownership in 11 different companies. We run, I think, 5 of them. So I've got my day job here. I'm also CEO of a company called Produktive. It's at theonething.com. And that's where we built a training and coaching company around the principles of the book, The One Thing. We've got our rental portfolio that at this point, is its own kind of small business. When you think of it that way, we have enough holdings there that it takes some regular management. What else do we have? I have a publishing company with Gary that holds the rights to all the books we write together. Wendy's got a company called Her Best Life to foster leadership in women. Got a big, great mastermind. And I could go on. So it all started with turning our first home into a rental. Like you don't know what it's going to lead to. But that's really, I promise you, the first 3 or 4 years when we were doing what everybody did. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you do the things and you start saying, well, I'm going to start investing in real estate. And you start a different lifestyle. And that's led to all kinds of business ownership and other opportunities that I never imagined.
Hey guys, this is Jordan Moorhead here. And I wanted to ask if you could do a huge favor for me. If you could go leave a review for this podcast wherever you're listening to it, that would really help me get this into the hands of other people that are interested in information about Austin real estate investing, and I'd be able to help more people. Thanks, guys.
And I love, and I know, again, Wendy was on episode number 52 of our podcast here, and she's told a bit of this story, but I love the story of we just turned our first home into a rental. Yeah. And it seems like that's such a little thing. Oh, we'll have one rental, but y'all did that quite a few times, right?
Twice. So we're living in our 3rd residence, and we still own all of those homes. Nice. So the way we got there, and I know she told the story, so I won't do the whole thing. And she's funnier than I am. So if they want to go back and listen to that episode, when we were writing The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, I led the research. And me and a woman named Heather Iaruso interviewed 120 net worth millionaires. And to get an interview, they had to, we didn't go to an accountant or a CPA to prove it, but they had to demonstrate that they didn't own $1 million worth of real estate, that they had over $1 million in equity in the real estate they owned outside of their home. And we identified 120 of them. I've still got the binders, 3 giant 5-inch binders with the transcripts of the interviews. And that was an NDA. It was crazy. Going into that book, I was thinking that You would climb the corporate ladder. My dad was an executive. You aim for a high salary. But, I probably read 50 investing books, some skimmed, some read deeply, note-taking while we were researching that book. And I remember turning to Wendy and I said, do you want to do this? Do you want to go for it? And we wrote out a little plan that we would buy 10 investment properties over 10 years, pipe dream. And we would get $75,000 in passive income from it, pipe dream. And we would have $1 million in net worth. That worked out. We hit $1 million in net worth, maybe less than 8 years. It's like 7.5 years into it, faster than we expected. But Austin, property taxes, it took us a lot longer to hit those cash flow goals, and we had to change strategies. So the first home, we owned a little house in Zilker, and back then, Heather Street in 2000, we bought it in 2001. I refer to it as the DMZ, right? It used to be South Austin. Now it's like downtown, right? Mm-hmm. It's so different the way the city's grown around it. But it had a fence around the front yard. It was all concrete blocks. It was very simple. We bought it right after the tech boom, paid $175,000 for a house that was 1.5 bath, no, 1 bathroom, and 2 living areas, 2 bedrooms, tiny, I think 1,100 square feet on 1/11 of an acre. This is like a cottage. And I remember thinking, we're never going to get our money out of this house. Mm-hmm. And we dolled it up. Right. We put a lot of sweat equity into it, painted it, put in new floors, planted my grandmother's flowers in the gardens, ripped up the fence except for the gate. We dolled it up. And then we decided Wendy was pregnant and she was 8 months pregnant when we rented it, because we were like, well, maybe we need to get a bigger house. Why don't we turn this into a rental? So we found a home in Barton Hills that was an estate sale. We bought it, I think, for $245,000, which is insane today. Mm-hmm. When you think about a 4-bedroom home in Barton Hills going for so little. It also was a major renovation project. But that house rented on Heather, except for, I guess, 2 years ago, we did some major repairs to it. There was almost no vacancy.
Oh, it's an amazing location.
It's so easy to rent a home in that location, even if it's small. But we also were like, this is our first home. When you're introducing people to it, it's a love story, your first home. Mm-hmm. And it was very convenient. And we just rented it professionals. And so it's still in our portfolio. And we threaten to sell it all the time because it's very hard to cash flow and it's worth so much money. We probably will 1031 it at some point. But my heart's in that home. If it doesn't feel like an investment, because that's the first stop for us in realizing we need to be owners. We can't be renters anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I think a couple things you talked about there. So the house being 1,100 square feet, there's a book, and the author, you interviewed him on the CEO podcast. He talks about that was the average size of the home in the 1950s and 60s.
So we interviewed Morgan Housel on the Wealth Building. We interviewed J.L. Collins, and I think we did Keith Cunningham in that series too. Is it one of them?
Morgan Housel. Yeah.
Okay.
He talks
Great book,
about
The Psychology of Money. If you haven't read it, add it to your list. We send it to all of our top clients.
Yeah, it's amazing. But he talks about in that book that 1,100 square feet in the 50s was the average size of a home.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny. We think, I could never live in 1,100 square feet. I lived in a bunch of duplexes, 800 to 1,000 square feet units, and they were great.
It's hard to think of that. Like our home's still we've got a great house in Barton Hills, our third home. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful. It is worth, I don't know, close to $3 million at this point, maybe more. I don't know, because it's such a expensive neighborhood that's grown up around it. But it's less than 3,000 square feet. We moved here from New York City. I was used to having my bed above my desk. You had to be clever, so everything felt built big to us.
So, kept your first home. That's an amazing idea. I really encourage people to keep homes rather than sell them, because like you just pointed out, you could have sold it probably a year or two later and maybe made 25, 50 grand. But now I'm assuming you've made well over $1 million off that home.
So I think we have it priced at about $985,000. The reality is anybody buying that home would tear it down and build something more valuable.
Sure.
Because lots in Zilker sell for $700,000-800,000. So, but we only paid less than 4% down. Like when you look at the return on investment on that money, with renters paying virtually 100% of our cost for most of the journey, it's off the charts. So, yeah, I mean, we also got lucky, right? I mean, that home, if it had not been in a gentrifying neighborhood in downtown Austin that was also booming, maybe it's worth $350,000 today, right? I can't do compound interest in my head. It still would be an amazing rate of return. The whole idea of live in it and rent it and move on is that you get the homestead exemption. So you get a tax break. You get to buy the home on the most favorable terms possible, right? Investor terms, higher interest rates, much more money down. And so you just move in, you renovate it, not for yourself, you renovate it for a future renter. And luckily, we kind of did that by accident because we just were poor. And so we were thinking durable, let's go durable stuff because we don't want to have to do this again. So we put in really durable laminate floors instead of hardwood floors, which is great if you want to rent the place. And then we more consciously did that in our second home in Barton Hills, knowing that someday we'd do the same thing.
I like what you said that you got lucky, but you don't get lucky unless you're in the game. And you had no idea that home was going to be worth anywhere near what it's worth today. You said earlier on, I thought we made a bad decision and we were never going to get our money's worth out of this house.
Well, when the tech bubble burst, I didn't really know how wealth was built in real estate. I just knew enough to get in the game. Mm-hmm. And Wendy, she's a top agent like yourself. She knows how to take action. I tend to be a little bit more analytical, but together we're a great team. And so we made the leap. I just looked around and I said, we have an unfair advantage in real estate. And I don't want to say that to discourage anyone, but we had access at the time. I could knock on Gary Keller's door, Mo Anderson's door, Mark Willis' door, people who'd been decades in real estate that understood that game at a level that very few do. And I would just say a lot of the people listening to this have access to an agent that's been playing that game. I don't know how long you've been investing, Jordan. We've been at it for more than 2 decades. There are people in this town that will, for free, advise you on the best strategies to move forward. And the trick is most people just don't ever do it. They think it's risky. And I will tell you this, if you never got $1 of cash flow, but your renters just paid off your mortgage and everything else was broken even, it's a little less than 4% rate of return just there. So it doesn't take a lot, right? When someone else is paying down the debt to turn that into a good rate of return, a little bit of appreciation, a little bit of cash flow, and you're doing better than stocks quickly, especially when you consider the tax advantages.
Oh, yeah, absolutely huge. And again, Mo Anderson has also been on this podcast. I don't have that episode number off the top of my head, but she's amazing. And she's still going at it with the most amazing fervor. And she's in her 80s, I want to say.
Yeah, she's approaching 90s fast. She started at Keller Williams when she was in her late 50s, and that was in the mid 90s. So I can't do that math quickly.
Yeah, no, she's awesome, though. Go back and listen to that.
She's got the energy of a 25-year-old, though. I mean, she is a beast.
Yeah, and she wrote a great book, too.
Yes.
Farmer's Daughter, but there's some specific Farmer's Daughter. And we'll put that in the show notes, too. So, Jay, you've written quite a few books on real estate. You've written Millionaire Real Estate Agent, Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Shift, Hold. I believe you were part of Flip, too.
Have you wanted to be part of GoBundance, the tribe of millionaires, but just haven't hit that millionaire status yet? Well, now you can, not even being a millionaire, by joining our new program, GoBundance Emerge. My name's Jamie Gruber, creator of GoBundance Emerge and member of the GoBundance community. And now you can join. GoBundance.com/emerge. GoBundance.com/emerge. Use code Jordan for $100 off this 12-week goal-setting program and mastermind that'll propel you to being a whole life millionaire.
I was more of a ghostwriter on Hold and Flip. Okay. I orchestrated those books. I worked with the authors and helped them kind of write a book that would fall into our Millionaire series. So I'm an uncredited writer on those, but I feel a great deal of ownership of them.
Yeah, great books. And then I would say probably the most popular and most widely read is The One Thing. And I know
Yes.
you talked about you still do a lot around The One Thing as far as teaching the principles in The One Thing. The goal setting retreat is how I know that best.
Yeah. So The One Thing is sold about 3.1 million copies. The Millionaire Agent is about 1.6, and then there's everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, they are both gargantuan books in terms of, like, as an author, they're dream books. Like, you pray for something like that, where you write the right book at the right time. And it takes a little bit of timing and luck to catch a wave. The One Thing caught a wave of extreme overwhelm. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent showed up at a time where agents wanted to be business people instead of salespeople. Mm-hmm. And we were the first and best choice for those things. So, yeah. Love The One Thing. It changed my life, and I apply it to investing all day long.
And the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, if you follow the guidelines and the structure laid out in that book, you will build an amazing agent's business. Which was the most fun to write, Jay?
There's no such thing as a fun book to write.
Oh, yeah.
I think Hemingway said, writing is easy. You just sit at a typewriter and bleed. And writing a good book is a labor of love. And to do it well it's a marathon. And by the end of it, if you don't hate every word you've written because you're so tired of looking at them, you probably didn't do it right. So I will say, I'll give you a different answer.
Okay.
The most transformative was The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Okay.
Because I went into that blind with no experience, right? A completely different mindset. And less than a year later, I had a transformed mindset. I was incredibly informed after talking to 120 millionaires and dissecting the conversations with Gary and Dave Jinks. And I read about 50 books on investing. Mm-hmm. So you look up, and this French English major just transformed the way they saw opportunity and what wealth looked like in a very short period of time. The second most impactful book was The One Thing. It took us 4.5 years to write. We had to stop and write shift in the middle of it. But it was transformative in terms of how we lived our life, because we were tapping in purposefully to a lot of things that we'd seen in the world and were doing instinctually or entrepreneurially. But now, you got a model for how to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had no idea that writing a book was. I had those feelings associated with it. I've never read that quote from Hemingway. The Millionaire Real Estate Investor was the first real estate investing specific book that I read, and it's absolutely helped me a lot as far as building my real estate portfolio and getting the mindset around that. But I'm just interested. Obviously, that was probably. So when was that written in regards to your introduction to investing? You bought your first house. When was this Millionaire Real Estate Investor book written?
So we bought our first home in 2001. Mm-hmm. And the story around that has got Mo Anderson. When I first joined Keller Williams, every Wednesday, we had a class at 8 a.m. on a different business topic related to real estate. And one of our executives would teach it, and you couldn't exempt out of those classes until you'd taken all of them. And I think there were 28 or something. And so I showed up one day, and it was on how to read a balance sheet, a business balance sheet, which you and I would probably call a net worth sheet. Mm-hmm. And showed up, Mo Anderson, our CEO at the time, shows up, and I'm the only student in the classroom. And I think she's going to cancel. And this is also a lesson. She's like, all right, well, instead of a class, I'm just going to sit with you, and this will be a coaching session. And I was like, what? And so she walked me through, a balance sheet, assets, liabilities in the business context. And then she said, and by the way, you should do this for your personal life. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she gave me a blank mortgage application, which they just kept copies around for doing this exercise, and said, look, I want you to list all of your assets. all of your liabilities. And she kind of explained all the categories, and then come back tomorrow and tell me what your net worth is. And I went home to our apartment, and my wife and I did the exercise. I remember we just bought some new furniture at Target that cost us like $300 to get a bunch of bookshelves and stuff for our apartment. And I was like, can we count that? I had no idea, right? Not assets at all. And we had very little college debt, right? Which is unusual. I'd had a scholarship for undergrad and help with graduate school. It was a deal I made with my dad. Wendy had a very scholarship as well. So we had very little college debt, very little credit card debt because we had good credit habits, but we didn't have really any assets. I had a 401k and we had a Toyota Tercel with 80,000 miles on it. So our net worth the first time was $2,200. But that exercise is when I said we should buy a house. Why are we renting? Like the number one asset we could add to this would be a house. Like that was both of our ahas. Like, wow. So anyway, I can't even remember how we started this because I went down that old memory lane. But the millionaire real estate agent. Go back to the original question. I think I went down a branch and lost you, Jordan.
When was the Millionaire Real Estate Investor written?
Oh, and when we bought our house.
And when did you buy your house?
So that prompted our house in 2001. And we launched the Millionaire Real Estate Agent February of 2003, self-published. 2004, we published the McGraw-Hill edition, which you can see behind me. They picked us up after rejecting us. And then in that 2-year period, as soon as we released it, we started researching the Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So I started sometime in the summer of 2003 doing those interviews. We wrote the book in 2004 and published it in 2005.
Okay. And then Millionaire Real Estate Agent, you actually just came out with the second edition here recently too, right?
I wish. Everybody's waiting on it. We have updated the models many times. But we haven't released a formally updated book. We write so differently today than we would then. It would be a real complete, it wouldn't just be an update. It would be a bottom to top revoicing, just because our style, if you read The One Thing, we just evolved. That was, The One Thing was kind of our 11th book that we worked on. So we just were working on books and growing as writers.
Yeah, no, I'm sure a lot's changed in the 20 some odd years you've been writing books. So speaking of writing, I want to talk more about reading books. I know you have a specific way that you like to read books. In your opinion, what's the right way to read a book, like a business type book that we're talking about here?
So, I'm a book nerd. So I'm going to a level beyond most people. I think that if you're reading nonfiction, there is some nonfiction that is purely for entertainment. But I'm mostly reading nonfiction to learn. And I prefer to read those in a paperback or hardcover because I like to have a pen out and I like to underline and take notes. A lot of times there'll be a blank page at the back of the book or the front of the book. And as I go, wow, that's great. I will go to the back of the book and kind of create my Cliff Notes edition of big ideas that I've learned from it. Because you know this, if you've read a lot of investing books, a lot of times I'm just reading them for one or two ideas. I read Justin Donald's The Lifestyle Investor. It's a great book, but I knew a lot of it. But the thing that I took detailed notes on is he went into depth on how he structured hard money loans. And it was the best, shortest explanation of how he used debt as a wealth building tool. And I took detailed notes. I've got that page flagged. And I think there was other ones. I don't want to reduce his book down to 7 paragraphs. But I'm looking for those moments around the ideas that I need to, because what I don't want to do is there's a book on that and go back and not have to read the whole daggum thing again. So you know what it does when you're in class, you take notes because it helps retention. And your mind has to synthesize the idea into your own words. And so it's part of learning. So for one thing, when I'm reading to learn, which is about half the time, I alternate, read a nonfiction book to make me a better human being, read a fiction book, which also makes you a better. I could have a very strong argument for why reading fiction should be on everybody's list, but that's also for fun. I read a lot of those on my Kindle. I don't want to destroy trees for them because I'm not going to take notes in them. I'm not a fiction author that I'm breaking down what they're doing. So I set a goal of one a week, and I try to read consistently around topics. Every year, I try to read a minimum of 4, usually 5 wealth building books. And after reading so many for so many years, like think about, I had a burst of them in 2004 where we were researching it. And then if you add 4 or 5 every year since then, I've probably read 120 or so more. Mm-hmm. And now I'm very discerning. I'll look at I'll buy a lot, but I'll look at them and try to see, is there anything new here? Or are they just mixing up the same ingredients in a different way? And so I read a few books on health. I read some books on a happy marriage. And then I also just explore my curiosity. But I find you don't learn a lot unless you read a few books in the category. Because a lot of times you're just getting one person's perspective. Mm-hmm. And if you read a few of them, you can start identifying who's the thought leader on this bookshelf. Like, still don't know of anybody that's better than Peter Drucker on management. Mm-hmm. And that guy's dialed in. Even though he invests in a different area, I've read a lot about Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. I like their attitude of long-term value plays, for business and so like you end up kind of figuring out like, who are my profits? Who are the people that I'm going to say, you get the pole position until someone is better than you? And that also prevents what I call fad surfing. Yeah. A lot of people jump out there and just whatever the latest book is, they jump on that behavior. And I like to make fun of, and I know I have a lot of health friends that do the cold plunge, and you might too. But like, I know that also is in a fad state. There are so many people doing it to be part of a movement versus being sincerely trying to do the thing that they need to do. And some of them will stick because it is healthful, but a lot of them are just jumping on the bandwagon. So people come to their house and go, oh, you've got a cold plunge. And half the thrill is showing how they built their cold plunge. And it's a story, right? And so I don't want to fad surf. I'm trying to identify a framework. We call them models. A model, the best model for how to achieve something. If there's someone who's like the expert on health, I know for years, Gary's like, Jack LaLanne's my man. And like his simple, basic philosophy, now it's more complicated, right? He's got someone for heart health. He's got someone for strength building. Because he's gotten, as he's grown, as someone focused on health, he's got his favorite offers for longevity, right? There are different models that you place together, and now you've got your game plan for how to live a healthy life or a wealthy life or whatever it is you're choosing. Does that make sense?
Jordan Moorhead here. Really quickly, wanted to tell you a couple other ways you can keep track of us. If you want to listen to all these podcasts and ask questions, the Moorhead team on YouTube is the best place to be. And then Austin Real Estate Investors on Meetup is a great place to keep track of all of our meetups we have going on.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. I like what you talked about with the fad surfing. It's so easy. Let's say Bigger Pockets has a new book out. I'm just going to read that book. And does it have anything to do with your life or what you're focused on? And there's always the next book. And listening to podcasts, you hear a lot of books. You say, I should read that. But do you really need to read that book? Is that going to do anything for you?
And not unless it's something that you want to get better at in your life.
Yeah.
So like, the best book on giving is Give and Take. I've read a lot of books because being charitable is one of our goals. I think Trout and Reese are the people that I think the 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing. There are a lot of great marketing books. I love Donald Miller. I love them. But like I can go, yeah, he's building on these same foundational blocks. He just created a new actionable recipe. Frankly, our one thing, we have some unique ideas in there that are unique to us. A lot of it is us building a recipe that we felt was practical for busy people to live to achieve more focus and better results. So like, I'm not saying that we don't do that. There's nothing wrong with those books. But I also, as someone who's dedicated to being better, I want to know, like, what are they building on? Like, who are their influences that if I knew more, I would see? Oh, that's Trout and Reese there. Boom, got it.
Yeah. No, there's just so many experts. And I think it's easy just to read the newest book that's come out on whatever subject rather than figuring out what's the best or the most read version of that. And it's probably the expert wrote that. I mean, yeah, there's so much there. So you mentioned topics too.
Timeless truths don't often change.
Yep.
That's why they're called timeless. And it's crazy how the fundamentals don't often change. There's tactics. So there are things that evolve quickly. Technology. I do think that health, like the latest research is something if you're really dedicated, but almost everything else, I'm looking for those foundational models. Every black belt starts with a white belt.
Mm-hmm.
And those things that you learn as a white belt, you're just building on the journey to becoming a black belt. Yeah, you learn some fancy new things, but the foundational things, like they have to be masters of those to be a black belt.
And I think even with health too, a lot of it, the timeless truths hold true. Eat whole foods, eat a certain amount of protein, move heavy things, do cardiovascular exercise. It's really simple, but we make it so complicated.
It actually starts with sleep. I want a deep dive.
Sleep, yeah.
The foundation is a healthy amount of sleep. And I don't have an hour number, but like it's different people. When you have slept enough, your body has the ability to heal and restore.
Mm.
It also turns off a lot of your cravings. When you are underslept, right? You're sleep deprived, the hormones in your stomach that trigger cravings go up.
Mm-hmm.
And the hormones that trigger satiety go down. And like the best way, like if you ever hung over in college, a hallmark of going to bed with too much alcohol, even if you slept through the night, it says they very low quality sleep, very low quality. And what do you crave the next day? Crap food, right? I'm going to get a cheeseburger and a Coke. And you're like, there's a lot that goes on. So feed, what you start with sleep will determine a lot of what you eat. You get abs in the kitchen, not in the gym. And yes, strength, balance, cardio, it's not a lot of stuff. Flexibility, maybe 6 disciplines, and you can live an extraordinary life if your genes also cooperate and you don't get cancer at age 18. Like I know that there's the wild cards that people are fighting.
And get a Prenuvo scan. I don't know if you've heard of Prenuvo.
Yeah.
It's just a whole body MRI, which they can find cancer earlier than your doctor's not going to look for.
I've debated that. I've read a lot about it because I'm a nut a little bit about it. And there's a place you can drive to Austin to Dallas to do it. I don't know if there's one here. I've got friends that have done it. They also got a lot of false positives.
Really?
And so I probably will, but I'm trying to go into it knowing that they're going to die it's like an inspection report in real estate.
Yeah.
They're going to identify every dang thing that might not be up to code. And this is a little worn. And it takes a discerning mind to know what you actually should address. Right. Is that a good analogy?
I think so. I got one and I did not have any false positives. I'm full of metal because I got in a bad motorcycle wreck on Bee Cave back in 2018.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Good now, but I did not. They saw all that and they saw a bunch of other things. They said to keep an eye on this, keep an eye on that, but nothing super negative. And I would rather know, I think, than
me too.
And it be wrong.
That's why I think I'll do it. I'm just trying to make sure I go in with the right mindset.
Yeah.
I'm also almost 55. So they're going to find all kinds of benign growths and things that just happen when you've been on this earth 55 years. So I'm just going to be prepared for that.
Yeah, sure. No, that's a good place to start.
I've got plenty of metal too. I've had 3 spinal surgeries at this point.
Man, that's no fun. Okay, Jay, so back to investing. So you've been investing for what, 12, 14 years now?
I would say 20, because really it was when we turned our first home into an investment.
Okay, yeah.
Our mindset switched before that, but I would go back to like 2004.
Sure. So Just so people listening have something to learn from, what's the biggest mistake you say you've made investing in real estate?
I do what a lot of people do, is that you experience some success and you start taking unnecessary risks. So our first big mistake, and it came from a lot of good people. There was a builder going into the Great Recession that was getting investors to finance the spec homes. And, the last 5 years, that strategy had worked incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
And we got one right before the market crashed. And that cost us about $150,000 by the end of it.
Oh.
And at that time in our journey, thankfully, we'd already been investing enough that it didn't knock us out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if that had been our first one, we would have told everybody it's risky. You should never do this.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that we should not have been doing it either. We were trying to find a faster way to get there versus going with the tried and true. And so I think that you just have to be careful whenever you switch strategies, because the moment you go from a new strategy, you want to think that all of your old intelligence works. It doesn't,
mm-hmm.
right? I was probably an 8th grader in real estate investing when we jumped into, how to work with a builder on a spec home. We were in kindergarten in that world.
Yeah.
Because, I didn't know we should have been monitoring the bank to make sure that the draws were being verified, which they weren't. So I didn't know all the things that would have made that an investment. It actually was speculative. It was speculative of us. We call that speculation, not investing.
Yeah.
And so we're like, okay, lesson learned. We're going to be very, very, very careful when we jump. And we've successfully made a number of hard money loans, usually a character loan to someone we trusted, and those have mostly worked out. I think we're going to have our first one bust on us again with a builder that Wendy worked with, but it may turn out we may salvage some of it. But for the most part, if you looked at them as a whole, we've done well with direct and doing loans, hard money loans. That's not how we're going to get wealthy. That's just another tool in our arsenal that we can use to grow our businesses. Everybody was going, why aren't you in crypto? I mean, I literally had someone ask me that because it's booming right now. And I was like, go for it. Everything I've learned about investing, my 20 years tells me that's pure speculation.
Yep.
I don't have an information, advantage there. Why would I divert funds, energy to go there unless I truly believe that was the future? I don't. I'm not saying anybody's wrong. I know people who've made a lot of money there. I also know people who've lost a lot of money there. And so I'm just like, no, I feel like, Warren Buffett, one of my mental mentors, when the tech boom happened, he sat on the sidelines. It would take him another 10 years to buy Apple stock. But at that point, Apple stock was just, right now, he was just buying, not growth, he was buying like a value stock because it was just an iconic company like Coca-Cola at that point. He didn't really change his strategy. But he's like, yeah, go make your millions. Good luck to you. I've got my thesis. My thesis still works. And my thesis is helping me hit my goals. And that's a lesson I have to tell myself. I made a couple of angel investments. I don't think they're going anywhere. Again, they were like character investments. I had friends that were coworkers that had started a startup, solicited funds. We've invested in a couple of syndications. Both of them friends. Brandon Turner has got one through his Better Life investing, and Cody Sanchez has got one in business. And we just said, how much can we afford to invest? There's a minimum. And are we okay if we lose it all? At this point, now we know. We're now stepping into a new area. We would like to find ways to do more indirect investing to get a better rate of return than just passive stock investing. But we're not sure that that's it. But I'm like, I trust Brandon. I know and trust Cody as well. And I think we're going to learn a lot. So if this money represented a paid education, let's first make sure that we get the paid education and then fight for our rate of return. And I think they'll both work out. I'm not saying that those are people you shouldn't invest with, but those are new territories. They're going a different way to invest in real estate. Because Wendy's like, I don't want to do property management on single families anymore. We're 20 years into it. So we're trying to find what will that look like next? Maybe small commercial. but we're still playing in the same field, but we're trying to find what's another levered way to get into real estate that we can hire management effectively to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I love that. And I think what Warren Buffett's his thesis is great companies at good prices. I don't know if I'm wrong there. So yeah, there's so many different ways to invest in real estate. Passive investing and syndications or hard money lending are two great ways to do it. So it sounds like the biggest mistake you've made investing in real estate really boiled down as investing in things that you don't know and understand completely.
Hey, y'all, thank you so much for listening. I would love to meet you in person. If you are ever free in Austin on the second and fourth Thursday of the month, we have an amazing meetup called Austin Real Estate Investors. Look it up on Meetup or check out the link here in the show notes. Again, would love to meet you in person, Austin Real Estate Investors Meetup.
Well, in fairness, our first rental property, we didn't know or understand either.
Sure.
But the good thing about real estate, and this is different when you have another investor, like when you're investing with someone else, you don't have the long timeline necessarily.
Yep.
Other things could happen that force decisions. But like on a single family home, like time cures almost all ills.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the wonderful things. It's not the fastest way to build wealth, but it is a very tried and true way with actually, when you really understand it, very minimal risk.
Yeah, no, your own investments with those amazing loan terms, those 30-year fixed rate loans are amazing. And like you said, time's going to cure most of your problems as long as you're paying attention. So with the spec builder, did you own the property or were you just lending to the spec builder here?
We ended up owning it.
Okay. In the end, you owned it.
Yeah. We were supposed to get a percentage of our principal back and then a percentage of the net.
Okay.
But he went bust and, like a lot of them do, had moved a lot of his assets into other family members' names and moved on. A lot of people got hurt.
Yeah.
Like there were meetings in hotels where they were trying to do like big lawsuits and sue the banks, which I thought, man, good luck.
Yeah.
The last thing I'm going to do is try to sue a bank, even a local one. So we ended up working with, I won't name the bank just in case this doesn't reflect well, but we went to the bank, talked to them, said, our DNA's in this too. We could have called you. I don't like that you weren't checking the draws. We'd like to renegotiate the terms of our loan. And so they worked with us, gave us much more favorable terms. We're basically, I don't want to say we stopped paying interest, but it became incredibly low interest. And they gave us almost an infinite timeline to pay it off as long as we made minimal payments. So we were able to take a sudden windfall somewhere else, and methodically erase that debt. And I remember celebrating. It was just nice to have that chapter closed. And it created a little bit of a drag on our wealth building, but not a huge one.
Yeah, no, it's nice to be able to work things like that out. And I think you mentioned also the private investments in companies. I've had a fair bit of an education on that too. Also with syndications, a fair bit of education on that too, that's been positive and negative.
I'll give you a theory. I think that angel investing, like any venture, it's like playing craps.
Yep.
Or you need to be able to make close to 100 bets given the success ratio. And you might, if you made 100 bets at whatever your investment level was in those, one might pop in a really, really interesting way. A handful would turn into decent companies, but not an amazing rate of return. If you don't get the one, it doesn't cover up all of the ones that go bankrupt. So once I learned just enough to realize, okay, I'm not going to play this game unless I have some sort of other advantage around it, because I can't afford to place that many bets on that venue. The syndication game really came down to me to, do I trust the people running it? And do I like the terms they're offering? The 2 and 20 is really common, right? That they get two ways to make their money. They get their management fees and then they get the first proceeds. And so you're very far down the table, which I generally don't like. But also, if I feel like they are going to be true to their word and the terms are better than 2 and 20, or the investment feels like it has even more specialness to it, then I will take those terms and run with it with someone whose character I believe in. But there was like in the 70s, they almost outlawed syndications because there were so many shady characters doing it.
Yeah. A lot of people got a bit over their skis these past few years with syndications too. The two you mentioned are, I would say, class actors, and they're great people, but a lot of people were new to it and got a little bit aggressive with their syndications these last few years.
Well, they talk about other people's money.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like if you can get paid to invest other people's money, your risk goes down. But like, I'm one of those people that I'm going to pay my debts.
Mm-hmm.
And if I talked you into investing with us and you weren't richer than me, I would be hard pressed not to want to help you pay off your debt too, if it was my call.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting.
So I don't play in that very much, but like I said, I'm learning. So I'm not an advocate yet, and I won't officially endorse Cody and Brandon's business models.
Mm-hmm.
I'll endorse them as human beings all day long, but I'm learning, and I feel really good about both.
Yeah, no, it's a learning process, and I think you're smart to take it slow with that too. Definitely had the education there. So, Jay, I want to be respectful of your time here. I know we're running up on an hour. A big passion of mine is helping agents getting started investing in real estate. What would you say are some of the biggest roadblocks agents run into, and how can we help more agents get started investing?
So if you are an agent and you're not married with someone with the salary, you know this. The business, like your income has to be seasoned for you to qualify for loan terms. So I do think that unless you're investing cash and you're early in your career, it can be a little bit more difficult. I also know that there are ways that you can manipulate your commission income and other terms to help you get into the homes, but the credit is usually something that holds people back, if not the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Like this is a very tough industry. The fallout rate is enormous. I think like a third of our industry churns every 3 years. And so it's higher than the small business failure rate because people get in because there's no barriers to entry and they don't realize how competitive it is and how much hard work is required. So I get that. Like you have to take care of your minimum income so you can provide for yourself and your family. That's one. Mindset's another one. Like Gary's like tried to beat it in our heads. And like every time you get a chance to take a listing, like you should ask, well, maybe I should buy this. And when we go on the MLS and we're searching for properties for our clients, are we looking for deals? Because people say there's no deals on the MLS, and I call BS on that.
Yep.
We found a bunch of them. We just had to be very diligent and have to understand value in different neighborhoods to find it. I want to say the third one is if you're successful in real estate, there's a great tendency to build your lifestyle around your last great year. And so if you don't cap your lifestyle at some point, you'll have no money to invest, which is a problem for every investor. It's just a little bit more acute because there is pressure. But I'm a luxury agent. I can't show up in a Volkswagen. And you start playing that game of appearances of success, and it can undermine your wealth building. A lot of millionaires walk around in overalls. They don't look like millionaires. I think Morgan Housel, one of his quotes is, the problem with the way most people think about a millionaire is that they think being a millionaire means spending $1 million, which is the opposite of being a millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think being able to generate the cash because their business income is stable enough to do that, being able to qualify for loans, that's a big one. And then I think mindset. Mindset's a big one. Do they really think about their advantage? No one knows the value of real estate better than a professional real estate agent, appraiser, or an investor. Those three people are like a lawyer, right, in the courthouse records. Like if you can navigate like the courthouse and all the record keeping, you have an unfair advantage in so many things. And a lot of attorneys get that. Our industry, appraisers, investors, real estate agents, we understand how value is created in real estate. And that is a massive, massive advantage for us and our clients.
I would say we have that advantage, and we also have so many advantages when it comes to tax treatment. As a real estate agent, you're a real estate professional, so you get to take an unlimited amount of depreciation and put it against your active income. And this is not tax advice for anybody listening at all. But
good point. Yeah, but cost segregation.
Yeah.
Right. We did our whole portfolio, and we actively, it's a part of our strategy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did a 1031 into a fourplex and then cost segregated it just 2 years ago. And when you look at the tax savings and the cash flow and the rate of return, it was an amazing deal for us. But you have to qualify as a real estate professional to do cost segregation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As real estate agents, you essentially automatically qualify because you're spending so much time in real estate professional activities. But I also like what you said there about the mindset too of we get stuck in spending. Our best year is our income. So we spend that money. We obligate that money to be spent. What really helped me was a book called Profit First, and I'm sure you've read it or heard of it. And it helped me to understand to take a chunk right when I made it, put it away for investing. And that's been transformative for me personally, is just taking that mindset over the years.
In the budget model for the millionaire real estate investor, we talked about paying yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
And just like a 401k, you know, if you've ever had an employment, like after the first couple of checks, you don't miss that money anymore. You can set up your bank account that when $100 shows up, 20 of it goes to this other account. So Wendy and I, those first 4 years, lived on about 60 to 65% of our income.
Mm-hmm.
We made it a game. How fast could we save up for the next down payment? And it was great. I think it's also very important that your spouse be on board if you're married.
Yeah.
Because as fast as one spouse can save, the other can spend faster.
Yeah. And I've heard stories from you and Wendy that you're more of the spender and she's more of the saver, correct?
That's BS. She in COVID, she read and then reread J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody explains compounding better than he does. And he's doing it around the stock market. And she finally looked at our net worth and said, okay, we can spend some money. And then she read Die Broke, I think.
Die with Zero, I think.
Die with Zero. There we go.
Yeah.
There was an old book called Die Broke. And that also kind of accelerated her thinking. She came from a childhood. I came from a modest childhood of, like, we were middle class. My dad was an engineer. You know, my mom was a dental hygienist. And we had a good life. We weren't wanting, but we wasn't a rich life. So, but she came from a place where a lot of her relatives live in trailers and just didn't have a lot. So she was always worried we would run out. So I do think that her mindset was different around money. But like, I don't have expensive habits. You know, like I don't go shopping. She gets on to me for buying books on Amazon that I can't read. And I'm like, get over it. Like a $10 book, I don't care if they pile up a little bit. I used to buy, I like to buy hoodies, and I like to have a good collection of them. But I'm calling, those are $35 discretionary purchases that are well within our discretionary. I'm not buying supercars, right? I'm not traveling to Monaco to watch the Grand Prix, right? I'm just like, I think that our taste run towards, like, I would rather spend a lot of money at Olame for dinner. And if I am, she's with me. So she can't say anything about that.
There you go. That's a smart strategy. All right. So we're running up here on time, Jay. Last couple questions before I let you go. What's your favorite mindset book you'd like to recommend?
I go to science. There's a lot of stuff out there, The Secret and stuff, that I think some people really have had their lives transformed. But like, I'm naturally kind of skeptical. And so, gosh, I can't think of the author's name now. Let me look. I've got it written down if you'll give me 1 second, because otherwise they're going to go type mindset book into, you know, Amazon and not find anything. Dr. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset.
Yep.
And it captured me very early, so I'm not spoiling anything. She was a type A learner, had to get straight A's, like put all of this, like, and she had parents driving that. And as a scientist, she wanted to study how people dealt with frustration. So her experiment was on young children. I want to say they were like 5 to 6 years old or something, maybe between 5 and 7. And she designed a series of puzzles so that every time they finished one, the next one would be harder. And it wasn't to see how far they could get. She wanted to see how they responded when they got to the one that they just couldn't solve. They weren't smart enough yet. They didn't have the agility, whatever that was. And she thought that she would get to then study their frustration, anger, how adults act out when they fail. And she was surprised that the kids came up and said, "Can I take this home? I want to keep working on it." And so the big takeaway from that book is there is a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. A growth mindset understands that failure is how we learn. That's part of the journey. You watch a kid trying to learn to walk, and it's just face plant after face plant. And they don't think they're a loser for falling down. They just think that's part of the journey. Kids babble before they speak, but somewhere around 7 or 8 years old, we're taught that failure makes us look bad. And therefore, we stop trying things that are new and unfamiliar. We want to do things that we're already good at. And I'm sorry, if you take that approach, your growth will be stunted. And so everybody in different areas of their life has a fixed mindset somewhere and a growth mindset in other places. But it gave me awareness when I got self-conscious about my performance. Do I have a growth mindset now, or do I have a fixed mindset about this? And it's helped me fail forward. So, but it's science-based, which is important to me. And she's won all kinds of awards. And it is something that is a lot of other scientists reference.
Yeah,
and it's not a bad read either. It's a short read. So it's not like they're reading a textbook.
Yeah, we have it. I need to read it. I've not read it. My fiance got it. So on that, how do you overcome a fixed mindset? Because I know we're essentially taught to have a fixed mindset through, I would say, formal education, whatever, maybe your family trying to keep you safe, those types of things. How do you overcome that?
Anytime you try to do behavior change, it starts with awareness of the bad behavior. I remember I had a friend that was a psychologist and I was trying to quit smoking. And I said, "How do you get people to do that?" And he goes, I start with asking them not to stop smoking, but just to track their smoking and to be aware of when they want a cigarette and then just go ahead and have it. And he goes, the weird thing is the moment people do it consciously, they immediately start smoking less. If they were a pack a day, they suddenly become a half pack a day because they realize, I'm about to smoke a cigarette. I have to write this down. Someone's going to see that I smoked a cigarette. And it's why am I smoking a cigarette now? It's not after a meal. It's not I remember from smoking, I had rituals, but it also was just this knee-jerk reaction, And so that awareness is the start of the journey. And I think, I've had a coach in my life, except for a couple of gaps, probably for the last 15 years, I'm paying someone. And it's hard to read the label when you're inside the box. You know what I mean? So having someone, a coach, a mentor, a spouse that will call your BS is also really helpful.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. We talk about goals, and one of our admins on our teams, her goal is to stop smoking. And she just started tracking it. And we talk about it every week, and we've seen it go down over the last couple of months from, I want to say she was a pack and then half a pack, and now it's 4 a day. So huge differences. I was a former smoker.
There's a point where you get where, from a drug standpoint, you can go cold turkey. And it's a lot less punishing on your system. When I was smoking in grad school, E.L. Doctora was one of my professors. And we went out after a workshop and he was having a drink, and he's National Book Award winner. We idolize this guy. And, he just drank a little bit of cold vodka and he saw me smoking and he goes, "Do you want to know how to quit?" And I was like, "Sure, tell me." And he goes, "When I quit smoking, I made a pact that anytime I wanted a cigarette, I would wait 30 seconds. And if I still wanted a cigarette, I'd smoke it." And he goes, "So wear a watch with the second hand." This is 1994, right? You're going back in time. And most people have digital watches. And he's just when you want to light a cigarette, just stare at that hand. And I found that if I stopped and thought about it, I didn't really need the cigarette anymore. So there's lots of ways, right? Just putting a little bit of barriers between us. It is the most healthful thing you can do besides quitting something like heroin.
Yeah. That same thing works for food too. If you're craving a food, if you wait a second or have a glass of water to stunt that,
yep,
it can help you get
absolutely.
Jay, what's the next exciting book you're working on? I know you're always working on something.
Well, I've got Gary back in the writing room right now, which is exciting. We spent a couple of years researching and drafting out a book ostensibly for people new to a career in real estate. Everybody gets the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which is a great strategic mindset for how to approach your career. It doesn't always serve people right in the beginning. I don't know that it'll be called The Rookie. That's our code name. I think right now we're calling it Restart, like capital RE, Real Estate Start. So you can start a restart, because there's a lot of people that get stalled, they get stuck. And we're trying to, the same formula that applies for a new agent would apply for an agent whose business is just kind of faltering. And it doesn't have the stigma of being called the rookie book. If you're a 5-year veteran that's in a bad spot, like, we wanted to provide that. So we're working hard on getting that book out into the world.
I think that's going to be so helpful for so many agents that were just on autopilot because the market was so hot, and now they have to get back to the basics. So I'm excited.
Normally, I would tell them to read Shift.
Yeah.
But that book is so connected to recessions that most people don't think it applies all the time. But same thing there. It just has a brand around it that makes people a little resistant to go for it.
No, I reread that last year 2022, when the market started to shift and we had our best
That's
year
the
ever.
example. You waited for the market to shift. That's what everybody does, but it's timeless stuff, right?
Yeah, it just seemed like a good time.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Jay, what's the best way people can learn more about you or follow you?
So the good news, or the bad news for me, is I think according to Google, there's only one Jay Papasan in the world. So I can't hide. I tend to be more active on Instagram than Facebook these days. But if they go to jpapasan.com, they've got links to my social. I've got a personal newsletter I do there that if people just want to follow along the books I'm reading, they can sign up.
Awesome. And we will put all that in the show notes here too. Jay, thank you so much for coming on here today. I really appreciate it. I had a great time. And again, go read all of Jay's books, no matter what you're doing. I've talked to a couple people recently, not in the real estate industry, that have read MREA and said it helped them so much in their business. So
it's a guide for any service business. And it has some application to product business, but for service businesses, absolutely.
Yeah, no, great book. MREA, the one thing couples goal setting retreat has been instrumental to our lives. And I really appreciate everything you do.
Going to be in Austin this fall.
Yeah, absolutely. Sign up, y'all. Thank you so much, Jay. Talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Thanks for all the preparation you put into it. Let us know when it comes out, okay?
Absolutely. Will do.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.